Facebook, YouTube, Steph, welcome.
Hi.
I'm excited for this because I haven't done one of these for ages, and I've been promising that I'll do more Facebook lives, YouTube lives, sharing like up to the minute market advice and what's going on, and interest and advice and that kind of thing. Then when I saw your figures for January, nearly £4.3 million worth of house sales agreed at 99% of asking price on average, I thought now would be a good time to do one of them. So for everyone on the video call, Steph is on fire. You can see the flames coming out of her hair. And I thought now would be a good time to talk about some real big questions that we're getting a lot. So I'll rattle through those in a minute. But I guess start off, and yeah, I didn't say I was going to do this, but it's just come to me. You're going to hate me after this. Just give a little intro, because you've been with Bespoke for how long now? 8 months, 9 months, coming up a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, give it an overview of background and who you are and stuff.
Okay. So yeah, Bespoke coming up a year now. Was with a little independent before that for a few months. But I was corporate agency through and through for 10 years. So finally broke out of it.
And we were chatting like a good few years before, weren't you, joined? Because I've always really wanted you part of the team. And as we were growing, it was always, we were chatting, and it may be the right time for us or you. And then the good old James put us in touch.
He did something good.
Yeah. So let's jump in. Great January. How do you think the property market year has started?
Really well, but I think I kind of expected it to be pretty good in January anyway. It's always pretty good in January. It's like one of the best months of the year, which people generally know about if they keep looking into property, but most of the general public out there aren't aware of the fact that it's actually a huge time in the property market. And I know we were all really worried at the end of last year about what this January was going to bring and how was the property market going to be. But it's been, a really, really good start. Probably one of the better starts I've seen, from sort of one extreme to the other, from like nothing at the end of last year to suddenly lots of people back around again.
I remember you saying to me, like, I was, mini budget, whatever it was called, and it was like September, October, November. It was tumbleweed. And you were like, it's just Christmas come early. Don't worry. January will be fine. And it'll kick off in January.
Yeah. Because it's always slow in November, December time anyway. So why, when there's all this uncertainty, would people suddenly decide, yes, let's go forward, let's do something at a time that it's all about to stop anyway? So I always
like, just Christmas came, I guess, a couple of months early. Everyone just sat on their hands a bit and then thought, okay, we are where we are. We still need, I guess people forget. And I think when you say it was really, really good, people are like, yeah, whatever. I heard in the news prices are going to drop 35%. But I was looking at the figures for January, and it was our biggest month since June 2021 for sales agreed. And you done over half of the total value sale. I think we've done close to 8 million in sale agreed value, which is pretty big for us. We're a bespoke smaller agency. And you've done over half of that. But when people are like, really, you've sold that many properties? It's like, it really ain't what it's like in the news.
No.
And so lead on to that a bit. Like, I guess now's a good time, because I want to talk to you about the general, how you feel buyer and seller kind of general sentiment is now when you're speaking to buyers, viewing and negotiating and offering, and sellers who want your advice. What's the general sentiment, starting with the buyers, do you think, on the whole? I know it's a hard one because it's varied, but...
Yeah, it's difficult because it is really varied. It depends on what end of the market we're in as well. So actually, obviously, your lower end of the market, the first-time buyers, they're probably more nervous at the moment, I would say. Still, they're kind of, there's a few people out there who definitely think they can get bargains, and this is the time to kind of jump in and see what they can get. I don't think that is the case. I feel like we've gone from what was very much a seller's market to now just a bit more of a balance. So whereas a lot of buyers out there seem to think it's a buyer's market, suddenly it's not. The prices that we're getting for properties, I think, say that straight away. Actually, sellers still have the upper hand when it comes to negotiating. It's their house at the end of the day. Um, but
And a
there's a
good
lot.
point on that, I guess, just to labour that point with an actual thing that happened. We won't go into the detail of the property, and the good thing with your January is you've got a really good spectrum because you were selling stuff at 225 to 1.5 million, and there was one property in there in that kind of price bracket that I think the buyer started their offer at 1.3 and ended up having a sale agreed, a purchase agreed at 1.5. That's like 200 grand. So I guess aside from the fact that you're an awesome negotiator, clearly, and every seller out there should be calling you to sell their house. That's also buyers obviously are going to try because they've got a market conditions where they can be a bit more bullish with the offer. Doesn't mean that's what they're going to want to end up paying. I'm finding people are still paying the right prices for properties.
Yeah, they're just trying their luck. At the end of the day, buyers still want to buy because, and I think this is where we saw a bit of a change over Christmas as well, is a lot of the first time buyers and the lower end of the market again, where their budget changed massively because of the interest rate changes and everything, the type of property they were then looking for had to change because they went from being able to afford a little 2-bed house to suddenly actually all you can get is a flat. So I think over the Christmas period, their expectations and their reality changed a bit. And where some people thought, well, we'll just stay renting then for a bit, obviously rental prices have then soared. And suddenly buyers have sort of gone, actually, it does still make financial sense for us to buy rather than sell. We just need to change what we're looking for. So they're kind of coming in, and when they do find the right thing, they're coming in with a lower offer to start with. Let's be a bit cheeky. Let's see what we can get, because we haven't got the same number of competition, I suppose. You know, the demand isn't as much as it was. It's still a lot. So that's why it's still quite a balanced market. But actually, you're not getting 5-6 offers on one property anymore. So buyers can afford to start lower and then negotiate up. But like you say, they've still in their head gone, I want this property, I like this property. And realistically, if they like it enough, they'll pay what they have to pay to get it.
And it's interesting on the rent thing, right? Because I was looking, let's say rents have gone crazy, right? So let's say you're first, and I don't disagree, and we'll touch on it in a minute on house price predictions for this year and, you know, all that kind of stuff that everyone loves to hear. But if you're going to be renting versus buying something at the minute, and you're going to pay probably at least $12.50 a month plus for a 2-bed apartment somewhere, at least probably even more like $13.50 over a year, that's over 16 grand just on your rent. Now rents are going up 10% a year at the minute. So what's happening to rents whilst the sale prices are shaving a bit, and that's all I think it is, a bit of a shave correction, and I'll touch on that why I think in a minute. But plus 10% to that. So by this time at the end of this year, you'll be looking to pay more like £18,000 a year for that same property. If you bought a property at 250 now and prices dropped a further 5%, let's say, you're down to 237 and a half, 250, 230, excuse my maths. That's 12.5 grand. So you've actually been better off buying something this year. And not only that, but repaying your mortgage whilst you pay your 12, whatever it is, mortgage a month. So it's really, I think people are playing a dangerous game if they're waiting. There's a saying that I always used to be told is don't wait to buy, just buy and wait. Like, wait it out.
I was just about to say that's the other thing that people forget as well, is that rental figure you're talking about. So let's say people lost 16 grand, paid 16 grand a year in rent. That's every year. So that's year on year on year until they eventually buy. The reality is, with the property market, yeah, it will have its dips. It will have its, as you say, corrections, because it needs it to make sure that we don't have an almighty crash at some point. The market has to correct itself. It has to happen. And it's beneficial that it happens rather than it being such a negative thing. But in order for the people who are renting to pay 16 grand a year and in rent, the change in the market, the drop in the price is going to be over, let's say, 1 year, and then they'll start going up again. Yeah. So overall, I mean, I don't know many people who buy a property thinking I'm going to buy this and live in it for 1 year only. You know, the reality is, even if you buy a little, 1-bed flat and it's your starter home, you're probably going to be in it for 2-3 years.
I actually think as well, like I said in my emailed market update, that if prices shave 10% this year, which I've actually based on January activity, I might be knee-jerking a bit, but I downgraded that a little bit. But let's say it did drop 10% this year. We're probably, all the media and all our facts show we're at about 5% already since the mini budget last year. And a really good example of that, we can show this on the front line, Sal, that you had agreed actually in August last year, I think, wasn't it? Unfortunately, chain collapsed twice. The buyer really wanted to buy steel but couldn't buy because of a chain situation. So we had to go back on the market, and we got exactly 5% less for it from a chain-free, ready to proceed buyer in February, was it? January? That's probably one your January deals, yeah. So that's really good. It's only 5%. It's not 35% or 40%. And I was saying in my update that it's, when I was looking at the figures and what I think is going to happen, and who knows, no one knows. But last year, remember that Southlands Avenue? There was like 49 inquiries in 24 hours.
Southlands Avenue. I don't think I've ever had went that crazy.
But even now, when you put a property live, even if half, and I think interest generally, mortgage approvals are down by half and that kind of thing. I think all the figures are at. But even if you put a house to market that would have had 10 inquiries in the first week, now only gets 5, that's still 5 more than 0. And I think national headlines people need to be careful of, because it's a national view. There's kind of 4 markets. You've got your national market, you've got your regional, your local, and then your micro, when you've got particular roads that buck every house trend. And it's this whole correction. It's a correction. I think it's really good for the market, to be honest, because that has to be offset against 20% rises across a year or 25% across 2 years during COVID. And it's going to stimulate the bottom of the market more for everyone to move up in the chain.
Yeah.
So yeah, good balanced buyer sense. Some buyers have think, my mate down the pub mentioned I should offer 20% offer under asking price. That's not actually realistic. It's not happening. So just be careful, because you can alienate sellers and agents if you go in with silly low offers. What's the general?
Didn't we?
What's that?
I had a buyer in January try it. And funnily enough, again, it goes to show that actually what the genuine changes in the market are, because we had a buyer who tried to negotiate 20% off because the market had already dropped by 15%, apparently. And I think without doing any research, without looking into anything, I immediately went back and said, look, the difference in price that I'm seeing at this time is probably more like 3 to 4%.
You're bang on, yeah.
It was not blowing my own trumpet, but it was bang on at 3.9%. That was the change in the market at the time.
Well, no. I think you should blow away. I think you should blow away. Blow your own trumpet, Steph. Because, and I remember that. And look, you can't blame a buyer for having a go in this climate.
Absolutely.
But what you need as a seller is a good agent acting for you. It's not going to just be like, yeah, I agree, the market's going to crash, it's terrible. And you need agent, because I remember that email. It was like, I've got friends who are agencies at so and so big, massive companies, and they think this. And you were like, that's great, they think that, but I don't think that. And I'm politely handling this sale, and my client and I have agreed we would drop a little bit to this. And he ended up coming back and obviously paying it, offering it, which he's happy, seller's happy, everyone's happy. We move forward after a little bit of a locking horns, which isn't a bad thing, I don't think, during such a stressful, emotional time. So that leads on nicely, I guess, to kind of seller sentiment. How are you finding that?
Really mixed. So again, it depends on the seller's situation. So if the seller has been out there and looking, and I think people are changing the way and the order in which they want to do things at the moment. Whereas before we had very much the sellers were having to go on the market, having to find a buyer, and then they were able to kind of look for a property, because there was no time to do it otherwise. They couldn't, if they saw a property and they loved it and they weren't under offer themselves, they'd lost it. That's it. It was too late. So now they're kind of going back on that a little bit and sort of thinking, okay, let's look a little bit, let's get a feel for the market a little bit first and everything else. So they're probably slowing down a bit in that sense. But the ones who've been looking for a while can see that the market is actually still quite good. So they're still coming forward with a bit of confidence in, look, actually as a seller, I know that there are still buyers out there. I know that there's a market. You've got other sellers who are very much reading the news. And we all know realistically the news is going to be negative, because otherwise it's not going to sell any stories. It's boring to say there's been a bit of a change in the market, but not much. So I think it's just a real mix. I've got some really nervous sellers and I've got some really confident sellers. What I would say right now is, as a seller, there's a couple of things that you've got to be really, really aware of. And one is pricing your property in the first place. Because there are a lot of agents out there, and I used to work for one of them, so I know how they work, that are specifically told, go out there, say whatever price you need to say, win the business, and then knock it down later on. So as a seller, you've just got to be so aware of pricing your property correctly in the first place, making sure you've got all the evidence to support why the agent thinks that price and everything else. Go with your gut a little bit as well. So they've got to be aware of getting that bit right in the first place. And then actually when they're on the market, they have to be listening to the agent's advice, because the market is changing daily, weekly, hourly, whatever it is changing. And we as agents, what I say to someone 2 weeks ago might not be the same as it is today. So we've just got to keep in touch, keep monitoring things, but they have to listen to advice.
I think that's a really good point. Like, what I've been saying to people a lot is, in this market, you ain't got a second chance. Like, before, you could put it on a bit high, market's rising, 3-4 months time, it's fine. The market's going up 5% a month, or whatever it's true, 1% a month, whatever it was, 10% a year. So it's only a matter of 6 months until you've added 5% of your property value. So the market would catch up with your price. When it's a flat market, or potentially still the other way, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can't launch your house on the market twice. And what we know for a fact is that 70% of interest comes in the first 4 to 6 weeks of marketing. I've seen that stretch out a little bit. I've had houses on for maybe 7-8 weeks that have been getting really consistent interest and then sale on week 9, for example. So that 4-week launch period, I think, has been stretched out a little bit. But you also can't underprice your house either right now, because it will find its value, but you can very easily overprice it and just kill the marketing, and you're dead. And then you've got to reduce the price a lot to get it sold. Really interesting on the whole fluidity of the market, because that is really true. Because imagine you're a 3-bed semi at 500 grand and all the other 3-bed semis are 500 grand. Fine. If a buyer wants to buy a house in that area, they've got to pay 500 grand. If 4 of those houses drop their price to 475, 460 and 480, and you're sitting there at 500 because they've become motivated to sell, you've got to compete. So the weekly assessment of the behind the scenes data, click-through rates, how it's performing versus other properties on the market in the area, and that kind of stuff has never been so important. And I know we all got maybe a bit lazy in the good times, because you put a house on, you get loads of interest. Oh, that's fine. We'll sell it next week or the week after. That ain't so much the case right now. And so you've really got to be on top of the immediate changes. So that is a really good point. Pricing. And what I wanted to say on the point about you've got to listen to your agent's advice is, if you don't feel like you want to take their advice, or it's not the right advice, or you don't trust them, you have to sack them and get one that you do trust and are going to take their advice. Because 4 weeks of not listening is going to affect potentially quite a lot. Because
I would add to that then another really important thing for people to be aware of right now, especially again where the market's changed and where properties aren't, because realistically last 2 years, you could stick a property on the market, even if it was, as you say, overpriced, it will eventually sell because the market will catch up with it. Now that's not the case. We are actually having to work quite hard to sell properties again, and it's not just happening overnight. But you've got to make sure you're not tying yourself into a really long contract with an agent then, because where properties aren't selling overnight, actually then I spoke to someone yesterday who'd had a letter through the door from me saying, I've just sold this property, yay. And he went, I've been on the market with this agent since September. Within the first 3 weeks, they dropped my price by £50,000. Now he's on the market for 575. So that's a 10% reduction in 3 weeks, because they went in too high in the first place, let's be honest. But he's stuck in a 20-week contract. So he doesn't like them. He doesn't trust them. He doesn't want to do anything with them. But he's now at the point where he'd rather take his house off the market and not have any interest for 2 months than keep working with his current agent, because he's stuck. So people we're back to a point where do not sign a contract that's longer than 4 weeks, and let the agent do what they need to do. I mean, obviously we don't have contracts full stop, but
obviously. What's so annoying about that, right, is that 10% reduction is going to be seen as the market's dropped 10%. Like, people need to realize it hasn't, because that should never have been on the market 10% too high anyway. Now, when that reduces by 5%, probably because has sat on the market to get it sold, that's a 15% reduction, right, from market launch. But if it had gone on the market at the right price and it ends up selling 5% lower, then that's a 5% price change, which is actually all right in today's economy. And this is where the crazy things come from, all because house is worth 500. Some silly agent said 550, signed for 26 weeks. I'll get it for you. 3 weeks passes, hasn't sold it, got to drop it. Really sorry. And it just frustrates the hell out of me. Really good. All right. That's great advice. What do you think? Time to sell. Now, there are two parts to this question. So I was doing some research. I've been doing some content myself today and for the YouTube channel, and I'll try and research trending questions that people are asking Google and YouTube. And I say trending because as in it's on trend, there's more and more. And in the last 12 months, I guess you would expect this anyway, but there's been like a 200% increase in the amount of people Googling how long does it take to sell a house. So answer that for them.
Do you know, it's a question that most people are asking me on appointments nowadays as well. Look, the reality is there isn't a rhyme or reason right now as to how quickly or how long it takes to sell a house. That's the thing. Like, there is some houses that I think are almost like a guaranteed surefire thing. They're really popular. They're a really good location. They're a really great house. And they just don't get the interest that we think they're going to. And there are others that I think are going to be really tough to sell, and we're going to have to really work hard, and it sells within a week. And it's like, okay. I would say at the moment, you're probably looking around the 6-week mark. Whereas 6 months ago to a year ago, you were probably talking just a couple of weeks. So it has definitely increased.
Yeah, I totally agree. You shouldn't worry if after 6 weeks you're not under offer. If you're getting 1, 2, 3 viewings a week, I think that's still a good thing, not to panic.
Yeah, and there are some houses that are really unique. So, you know, there are some, like you said earlier, there's some that are just 3-bed semis in the area, and like, you know, they're in a good road, but they're very much, they're all the same or they're all similar. And so people know what they're getting. And some people really want that sort of thing. There are other properties that are just one of a kind, and they're going to be Marmite, realistically, which means that one person will turn up and love the house and then pay really good money for it because they're not going to find it again just down the road. But in the meantime, you're going to have to just roll with the punches with the people who it's not for them. And that's fair enough. It's not always going to be for them.
That one that you agreed, one of the ones you agreed last month, I think had been on the market, and this is a great example of that, as it, I think the seller was panicking more than you, and you're like, look, don't panic. You've just got a quite unique place. It is worth what I've said it's worth. Just give it some more time. And I think that was maybe 3-4 months on the market.
Yeah.
With fairly good, consistent viewings. I mean, so until things die a death and there's no interest for like 2 or 3 weeks, I don't think you should be panicking anyway in this market. And I think you're right. That 2 weeks, as I explained earlier, has just gone from maybe 6 to 8. And as long as the metrics behind the scenes and the agents are getting consistent viewings, then you'll be fine. So that question tends to come into 2 parts. How long should it take to secure a buyer for my house? Now, average 6 to 8 weeks, because some stuff we're still agreeing 2 weeks after launch. Some stuff we're agreeing 4 months after launch. Yep. The important thing is I'm not under offer yet. It's more, what's the back end information and data showing you? The second part to that question, once a buyer is found, hopefully in that average of 6 or 7 weeks, how long should it take to get to exchange of contracts and completion?
Oh, this is the part I don't like at the moment.
Love the grin. Says it all.
I mean, I think there's a difference between what it should take and how long it actually is taking right now, because unfortunately, there's definitely a lot of pressure that we're having to put onto solicitors right now. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying all solicitors, because I work with some who are absolutely fantastic and they are so on it and they're so communicative and they're brilliant. But there are a lot out there right now who are really dragging their heels and really taking their time on things. I've just had one where we've got everything in. We just need them to raise some inquiries, and it's taken 4 weeks for them to just raise inquiries. They've just sat there doing nothing for 4 weeks. So I would say at the moment, on average, it's probably taking about 4 months. And I'm generally saying to my clients, look, A, it's so important to choose the right solicitor, so let's get this right in the first place. But B, let's just set your expectations now so that you are aware of that. And again, you don't suddenly go into panic mode later on when actually you're 3 months down the line and think you have exchanged or completed by now and you haven't. So it should be going a lot quicker than that, but it's just not, unfortunately.
I think you've done really well with it, actually, with the apartment in Hawley you agreed recently, because I'm in the WhatsApp group, and he was like, "Really, that long?" And it was like, honestly, I'll aim to get it quick sooner, obviously, but I'd rather tell you that and get it through sooner than tell you January and we're sitting here in March still. And the same example, I had a completely cash buyer on a property. I agreed it in November, mid-October, I think it was, with completion due, exchange, because it's cash, exchange completion before Christmas. It's still cash, nothing's changed, but we're still having exchanged, and we're now midway into February nearly. It's going to exchange with Monday, Tuesday, but that's just been, and in fairness, either side solicitor are pretty good as well. So it's really been just odd. Everything's taken ages, just ages and ages. So just plan that. Or, little plug for the old committed transaction sale process that we developed and built and designed and created. Because there's a house I mentioned earlier that was agreed last year in September, August. Chain collapsed twice. Sellers are like, I can't have this. I'd rather take a little bit less and just get it done quick. And you agreed that in January, and it's exchanged today.
Yay!
Briscoe. And that's crazy. Like, what's that? 4 weeks? 5 weeks?
5 weeks. It's been it's 4 weeks to exchange. It'll be 5 weeks to completion, which is next week.
And the most important part of that is because the seller was happy to get all the legal work done before going to market. And it just cut down all that to and fro in for weeks and weeks and weeks. Like you've said, they've had inquiries, sat on them for 4 weeks. With this whole legal pack thing, there's no 4 weeks to wait for replies. You've got them all there. And reservation deposit, that helps to get the buyer on side for timescales. So yeah, I'm waffling, but let's go on to the next quick point that I really want to finish on, actually. And it's been really good. I love these little geek out sessions. We should do this more often. Sentiment done. We've just touched on good time to buy, sell, move. What we didn't touch on there, actually, we spoke a lot about first-time buyers and a price correction. I don't feel is a bad thing. It's definitely not a house price crash or collapse. 07, 08 was a collapse and crash overnight, but this is far from it. And it's happening slowly as well, because of, so that's not a crash, that's a correction. But movers, this is important, because I'm finding more and more people moving just are fine with the relativity of it.
I was just about to say, actually, what I think a lot of people miss, actually, as well, again, when it comes to sort of you're selling your property. Let's say I've got a client who's been in the market for quite a while now, unfortunately, and again, for various reasons, I don't really know why she hasn't sold. She's had some really positive viewings, and unfortunately, they've not been able to get finances for one reason or another. So there's a whole factor of things that have meant it hasn't worked. And we've just changed her price again, which she was really unsure of doing until I highlighted to her that she's upsizing. So everything's relative. Where her prices come down, other prices will come down as well. And actually, for her, as an upsizer, you kind of want the prices to come down a bit, because then 10% off her price is a lot less than 10% off the one that she's wanting to buy.
Yeah, so a house at 500,000, if it drops 5%, you're 25 grand worse off. But if you're buying at $1 million, you're 50 grand better off. So you're 25 grand in total better off to move in this kind of market rather than always rising up. And that's where I think good agents like us will explain that to sellers properly, to say, look, it is a reduction, I guess, in price, but it's a gain at the other end if you move in this market. And not being fixated on price. One thing I'm always saying to clients is, okay, so you want 700. Why is that? Oh, just because, I put a new kitchen in. Yeah, so my mate told me it's what it's worth. And I'm like, but so if someone, if you're 680 cash, want to complete in 4 weeks, which meant you can get that house for 900 for 850, you wouldn't do that, no? Oh yeah, of course I would, yeah. So just forget your kind of fixation on price and just let a good agent achieve the best market value in today's market. Then use that to go out and look and offer and buy. If it works, it works. Great. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
But again, that's where an agent comes into their own as well. If you've got the right agent, like us,
Yeah.
it's the idea again of, okay, we're going to negotiate really, really hard on your sale and hopefully get the best option we can, regardless of your price as well. I always say to people, look, a marketing price is a headline price. It's just something to get people through the door. And I was explaining to a seller recently, you've got to think when people are looking on Rightmove and they're just looking at properties like that, they're using their head. So you've got to put out there a price that's attractive to them, that makes them want to walk through the door, because actually their head tells them it's a good idea to do so. Once they're through the door, they'll follow their heart after that. So then you can negotiate, you can push, you can try and get those higher offers. So the headline price isn't so important either. It's what you do after that point. But again, a good agent as well will then help you negotiate on your next property. So actually, where I'm saying, okay, I might not get you that much money on your sale, I will make sure you get that back and some when I'm negotiating for you on your purchase.
Yeah, and the reassuring thing there is, because unless I do, you're not going to move. I get it. So just entertain this marketing price, entertain this offer that I've put on your table from this really strong buyer. Let's not just accept or refuse it. Let's go and use that this weekend, viewing properties, because now you're more doors are open. Same situation recently. I had a client that came to me, and long story short, really lovely place. But all the properties similar to his were like 310, 320, but he wanted 350. And it should be worth 350 because it's bigger, it's got underground gated parking. And all these ones at 310, 320 haven't got all that. So I said to him, if we set that at 350, you're just going to be totally dismissed because you're like the most expensive one bed in the whole of the area. Put it on offers over 325, you're going to compete really well with the market, and they'll come and see it. They'll walk down to the basement and realise, hang on, it's got a gated parking space. That's worth 20 grand. And all of a sudden we're up to 340, 345. So yeah, your marketing price is just there to compete with the market. What you end up selling for, what you need for it, how much is two different figures. And that's, I've got a video coming up next week, which is like, never market your house with an asking price, period. Because it's not, it might be wrong. Like if you're like, I want 700, I'm going to ask 700, you could be totally wasting your time. Guide it at 675 and you might get 710. So it's a real, pricing is crucial. To stop me waffling, let's finish this amazing live. Thank you for your time. With your 2023 price prediction. This is recorded, and on the 31st of December 2023, I'm going to watch it back and see what you said.
I think, look, I think realistically the prices they are coming down. They have come down a bit already. They are going to keep going down, but as you said earlier, I think it's really gradual. And I mean, you're probably talking like not even a percentage a month. Like it's really, really gradual. So I think we had this conversation a little while ago. I don't think we're going to see the 10% drop that was discussed at the end of last year. I feel like there's still too much demand out there for it to go down that much. I think it's going to be somewhere around the 7%, personally. 5 to 7 would be my prediction. But like I say, I don't think you'll find a time other than the normal times of year where you've got the school holidays, it goes quiet, and Christmas, it goes quiet. I don't think you'll find a time of year where everyone's kind of sitting there in panic mode. I think it's just going to be quite a steady year, basically.
Well, that's the thing. Where the market monthly right now is under complete scrutiny. Like, wait until school holidays. It's going to be like, told you. But these things happen. Like, you got to look at and I totally agree with you. By the end of the year, I'll be really surprised. And the good thing of what happened with the mini budget and stuff is it is literally the end of last year. So January to December 2023, I think we could see exactly the same 7-8% fall, maybe 10 if base rates go up again. But they're saying they probably might not go up anymore. So let's see. Inflation's coming down. Loads of positive things happening. No one really shares. But
yeah, can we just touch on that a sec, actually? Because obviously the day that the base rate went up, I actually had a viewer for the next weekend saying, I'm going to have to cancel. The base rate's gone up. That's it. I can't afford the house anymore. I was like, why? Why does that change your affordability suddenly? And he said, oh, because the interest rates changed. I said, but the mortgage rates aren't going to immediately go up. Just because the base rate went up, the mortgage rates aren't going to. And he cancelled anyway. And less than a week later, he phoned me and he said, you were right. The mortgage rates are fine and I can still afford the house. And they actually went down.
And that's the worry. I just think so much fear out there. And which why I want to do more of these things. I think that these are really important to do actually to get that, stop the fear. You know, just because it went up, you feel like, well, I've got to pull out, can't buy, I've got to rent, nightmare. But actually, the lenders, quite a lot of lenders' rates are coming down whilst base rates going up because they're all compete. They see the market still firing, and so they want to compete for all those buyers who are still buying to come to their lenders bank, and so yeah, take a kind of entire view of things. Don't listen to the media. Speak to good agents. Anyone at Power Bespoke, particularly Steph, is on this live now, and any other agents out there. You know, if you've got friends and family who have used really good agents in the past, give them a call and have a good front line. I've been really hot about my front line market update because it's exactly what we're seeing. House launched on the market the other week. It had, I think, 9 viewings and 3 offers. Like after the first weekend of viewings, there's certain areas and pockets and locations that are still really in demand, and your national house prices. You know, I don't know what's going on in Bradford, and I've got no interest in knowing what's going on up there because the agents up there will know what's going on with Bradford. The kind of southeast, we're semi-insulated a little bit. I think our prices always rise quickest, maybe fall quickest, but let's see. Steph, it's been awesome. Great month. Stay on fire.
Thank you.
And I'll see you in here again soon.
See you later.
See you later.